the place where singles shine, celebrating life, divine by design, faith and love, we intertwine. Room 77 with your journey's prime.
Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. Today we're tackling a topic that resonates with many: the balance between appreciating the beauty of marriage and recognizing the dangers when it becomes too central in our lives. Whether you're single or married, it's easy for the pursuit of status of marriage to become more important than it was meant to be. In this episode, we'll look at the blessings of marriage, its representation of Christ in the church, and how it can become an idol if not approached with the right mindset. Let's explore this together and find what it means to value marriage without losing sight of the bigger picture. Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. I am your host, Natasha, and I am here with Monique.
Hello.
And David.
Hello.
I'll wait for Dave.
Wait for David. Is David okay that I always introduce you like second?
Never gave it a thought, really.
Now he can only think about that one thing. At the end of last podcast, I mentioned what I want to talk about this one and the next one. And this one is all about how evil marriage is. And
Great start.
Just like it's evil.
it's evil.
It's
Don't
nasty.
ever get married.
You know, the funny thing is that back in the early, like at the end of the 18th, 19th century, 20th century, it was literally believed to be evil, especially the sleeping arrangements. We'll put it delicately. And it was like, get it over and done with quickly. And then you're like,
From that perspective, the wide view is
the Puritans,
that
right? It was
sex-
the Puritans.
well, it's
Wasn't it?
it happened with the aesthetics is basically a whole thing with sex is what corrupts the body. It was the original sin. And if you managed to not have sex, your body would not even deteriorate, basically. There was like these women who, or this, I can't remember specifically which woman, but they basically were saying like, it was in the beads history. So way back, it was like an old one. Anyway, they talked about how this woman had died as a virgin, but then you could go and see her body and it was as if she had just died. There was no deterioration of the body whatsoever. So
Have they,
it was,
have they not read Genesis?
it
The original sin didn't even come from humans.
it was just because at that time too, you had the Catholic Church where they were basically saying what everything interpreted as and in Latin. And
Yeah.
so it was,
And I have a question.
and the apple was actually just a euphemism.
It was.
Or the fruit was a euphemism for sex.
Oh, is that what it was? Oh.
Yeah.
I have a thought question, whatever. So do any of you, when you're dead, care what your body looks like? Just saying.
But wouldn't it be nice to know that if you just abstain, you just had your body would look pristine forever and ever until Jesus came? I don't know. It's just weird. But yeah.
What?
Yeah, I know, right?
I have flat feet and one eye. I don't think it's gonna work out that way.
Yeah, I've got an extra chin. I don't know where that happens.
Chins. Are we supposed to do this? Get rid of the chins. Only I could do that everywhere, like my tummy,
My thighs.
my thighs. Just
Apparently, I'm supposed to be walking a little bit more than I am.
But yeah, like, so that was like the idea. So and again, it's jokingly saying that marriage is a bad thing, but the idea of today is to talk about what happens when you make marriage too much.
It becomes your
Bring it
everything.
beyond what it is. It becomes, so too marriage minded, because a lot of times we have touched on this specifically in a lot of podcasts, but I don't think we've had a specific podcast about the topic. That's why I'm going to split it up. So this is actually the dangers of being too focused on marriage. And then the next one could be the dangers of being focused too much on singleness. Like too much of anything can be a bad thing, essentially, in the sense of making it too much.
That brought to mind where Paul says, all things in moderation. Everything is beneficial. Everything is good, but not everything is beneficial. And all things in moderation.
Everything is permitted. And yes, and not all things are beneficial. I think like just bringing up what happened during the Middle Ages and with the asceticism, it brings about what I have discussed in the past. But basically what happened is at the Reformation, it was interesting. The Catholic Church didn't really double down on the celibacy thing until the Reformation.
Huh.
Like they were trying to make it happen everywhere, but they weren't like being hard and fast until they got pushed back. And then they were like, no, we're going to now stand hard and fast when the Reformation happened. And then the reformers actually were very moderate in their stance, marriage and singleness being equal, or celibacy and marriage. But then it became, because the Catholics pushed so hard about the celibacy, then the Protestant church pushed back so hard on the marriage, and then it became
A dividing
more
wall.
than it should.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we ended up going from one end to the other instead of the moderate middle, which is, I think, the in many of the churches, it's just the mindset that people have towards marriage. If you're not married, they're like around yours, and they're like, "Don't you want to get married? Don't you want to be married? Don't you want to do this? Don't you want to do that? How come you're not married? Aren't you looking for somebody?" Blah blah blah. It's never ending,
Mhm.
as if your life can't continue once you're in your 20s, like until you figured this part out.
Yep. And then with the Catholic Church, they have like where all those women, in order to escape marriage, became nuns.
Yeah, and so
Which
they didn't
just,
necessarily
and they
even
still
believe.
have, yeah, and they still have.
There's still nunneries and stuff now, and I think now it's more acceptable to be a single woman now. Like, you
Mhm.
don't need your parents' permission to be a single woman
Right.
in
We're
most
all
places. And
we're all one big church then.
Yep. And I do think, if I'm not mistaken, at that time it was considered an honorable thing to do to enter into the church, what is what they call it, to give your life to God, in that you were going to be married to God and you weren't going to be married to anybody else, and that was your service, and it was supposed to be an honorable thing and was supposed to lift up the family status a bit, if I'm not mistaken.
in a sense, like, it was mostly that was the women's thing, but to be a nun back in the day was not a great thing. Like, it was the monasteries that had the money. It was
Oh.
the monasteries that had the support. The women, the nunneries basically were like making ends meet, just because some of them honestly were believing that, like, they were trying to follow God and stuff. But like you said, there were a lot of women who basically were like, it's either this or get married to what my parents want me to get married to, and I don't want to marry that person because they're old or a creep or whatever. So they were like, okay, I'm joining a nunnery, and they didn't necessarily believe anything about Christianity. They just were like, this is my way out.
So maybe it was the priesthood that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, and we can discuss that, I think, on the next one when we're talking about the singleness,
The extremes.
prioritizing singleness. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just bringing in where this is where the sort of divide came more at the just after the Reformation, because I think when you actually look at reformers, they're very moderate, just pushing back against the celibacy, but saying that, hey, they're equal.
Yeah.
But then it became like a butting of heads, and like most things, what happens, and you see it right now in politics, like the center middle politics almost, pardon me, are non-existent. They've been so much pushback from the right and the left that there's been this huge divide, and there's almost nobody like center left, center right, or if you are, you're considered a traitor to the right or the left because you're more center leaning, which was used to be the norm, and that's why people could get along better at the time, because you were just barely differing on things, and now it's become such. So it was like that
Become
with the
very
church.
polarized. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we've come across with this ministry, even like doing things on social media and stuff, and being like labeled family,
Anti-family.
yeah, anti-family, or what's wrong with this world and things like that, just because we say that singleness is equal. But let's just start. I think it's really good to point out the fact that marriage is a good thing.
Mm.
God says it's a good thing. And we're told that many things in the place in the Bible that this is a good thing. It's a blessing.
It's a gift from God.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to see where my verses are here.
You mean Proverbs 18? He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord.
So that's a very good one that we're talking about. This is one of many places.
Mhm.
It talks about having a quiver full of children. It's who finds a wife of their youth, and all those things are like all positive.
Right.
And I never want to say that marriage is a bad thing. It's not something that should. It's definitely something that should be
Honor.
honored, championed. It's a positive thing. If people find marriage, they find a good thing if they do it in a way that God intended.
Right.
And I don't ever want to say otherwise.
Right.
And we also should look at marriage. It's a reflection of Christ and the church. Like, why is marriage even a thing? God created marriage as a symbol of Christ and the church, of what it means
The unity
to
of
be the
God to
bride and
man.
groom. Yeah. And so that's the purpose of marriage. And so that's a good thing. Husbands are to love their wives. Wives are to respect their husbands. Like we're seeing like the sacrificial love that Jesus showed the church by dying. And it's just all good things.
Yep.
All good things. And I don't want to ever want people to be like, oh, you guys just don't
Yeah.
like marriage. You've had bad experiences or you just either one or the other. No.
No, it just never happened again for me.
Yeah. And also we happen to be, we're a singles ministry.
Yeah.
So we are going to talk about singleness.
Right.
We are going to talk about the positives of singleness. And we are going to promote it
Yeah.
in a sense of that this is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But we also don't want to ever have people think that we're like, oh, marriage is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Or stop trying to be married or stop thinking about being married when you're not married is a bad thing. No, it's
Okay, I'm gonna critique your statement here. So when Jesus explains to the Sadducees then that marriage will not be given or you will not be, like, he explains to them because they question the resurrection and such, that marriage is not going to be a thing in heaven. Okay, so then it represents marriage as a man-made thing or a man-based thing, because in heaven it's not going to be there. So what's the value of marriage now according to that?
because it's like an ongoing representation of Christ and the church. But once we get to heaven, like a symbol's no longer needed because we're actually living the reality
Yeah.
of. But God has given it to us as like to show and to symbolize what is eternity, what's in eternity. I think.
Yep. Yep.
That's
Because once we're in heaven, we will be with Christ. So we won't need that symbolism. We won't need that representation on earth of what it is, what Christ and the church is like, because we will be with him. It'll be different. Because he even says there will be no marriage or given in marriage in heaven. But he has this here for that reason, so that we have that understanding of what it is to be Christ, to be part of the Christ and the church.
because he says like this is what like you're created man and woman and you would be united.
Yeah.
Leave your father or mother, be united, become one. And I think that's the type of relationship that we should be having with Christ in the sense that we are one being and we have become one mind and one heart with Christ. But unfortunately, due to sin, it's never going to be perfected here on this earth. But in eternity, then we will get that perfect unity that was always meant to be. So yeah, it's definitely a positive thing. There's nothing wrong with wanting it. There's nothing wrong with looking for a spouse within reason. We've talked about different pitfalls, but just there's nothing wrong with desiring it.
Yes, but the thing is too is that it has to be clearly emphasized that it is not an eternal thing,
No, it's
No.
not. No.
right? So they can't be, and like you said earlier about how express or like clinging on to marriage or singleness and either of the two at such a degree, because that'll be an interesting tackle next episode actually. Now that I think about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be a model of Christ's love, really. So the roles of husband and wife in marriage reflect Christ's love for the church. Husbands are to love their wives as Christ loved the church, and wives are
This
to.
is yes, but that's only reflected in the Gospels and further forth.
Sorry.
What the Old
say
Testament?
what?
What about the Old Testament? How were they able to know the reflection of the marriage in Christ?
Because they were always told of the promise to come.
Yeah.
I think,
Okay,
and the
that's
Messiah
it.
that's to
Yep.
come.
Yeah.
So again, marriage, good thing. Desiring marriage is not a bad thing. Getting married is not a bad thing. But what happens when, like, I could definitely say it happened with me 100%, that I focused so hard on wanting that marriage that I just threw everything else that was good, where I was and who I was and what I was to do. And I didn't know that, but I definitely 100% made it an idol in my life.
Yep.
And by putting either singleness or marriage on a pedestal of this is the best way, we're creating an idol out of it because God's never said this is the better way. when it comes to the relationship status. He's saying this is a good thing. And then we see Paul saying that singleness is a good thing. But they're not saying, like, hey, this is the best. If you want to live your absolutely best life, then you have to be married. There's no verses that say that. And as soon as we start saying this, but what if, but if only, but, and as soon as you put those buts in there about your life, you're starting to tread on thin ice, I think, about how you're viewing a good thing as a
Yeah.
God thing. And
for example, like for myself, like when I became a Christian, and I wasn't a Christian for very long when I met, and it was the first thing in my mind. Okay, so I was not a Christian and already had a child before I became a Christian. And so I had the sex life outside of marriage. Of course, when you become a Christian, and the first thing they tell you is you can't have sex now because you're not married. The first thing you want to do is try to get married right away because you're used to that lifestyle. This is a warning that I'm given, by the way. Prioritizing that over my relationship with God, over any other thing, is to have that fulfillment happen like ASAP. I have to find somebody like now, too sweet. Let's not wait. Where's the altar? Let's say our IDs and let's get down to business. Destructive because you have no discernment when you're in that mindset. And we've had that because we've seen the conversations where people say, I got to get married because I can't control myself.
it makes me roll my eyes so much.
And ask me how that worked out for me.
Okay.
So when you make anything regarding marriage, sex, relationships, you're the center focus of what has to happen to you.
If that's what's going to fix whatever it is that's in your life,
it didn't fix it.
and it's not God, that's an idol.
Yeah. It didn't fix my life. It destroyed it.
I know, same here. When I look back, it's insane how tunnel visioned I was towards marriage. But the thing was crazy. You're focused on it so hard, but everybody around you is cheering you on.
Yeah.
And it's just, they're trying to offer you advice on how to make it happen. They're trying to be like, yeah, don't worry, it'll come. And this is what the Bible says, wife and mother, blah, blah, blah. So you're being championed down this,
it's like you're in a relay race and you've got to pass the baton and they're going, keep going, you can do it, keep going.
It's going to come, it's going to come. You're just like, and you're just like, your focus point is just that
finish
marriage.
line.
And it's crazy because like, there's a point where you just really don't care about who that person is.
No, you just need the dress, the priest, and the ring.
Yeah, you just need to get that. I do that, Mr.
Isn't it just a piece of paper?
It is. In that instance,
in that instance, yeah, you're not actually, I think, getting married for the right reason.
No. You may think you are. You may honestly think you're getting married for the right reason. But when the whole thing...
Because when there's emotions involved, it's really hard to step back. It's super hard to step back.
Super hard.
Because emotions rule, especially, I think...
Rose-colored glasses, which is the color of my frames, just for reference.
Yeah. It's just, it's almost crazy because, like when I think about it, it's, imagine you're running a race and you're going to the finish line and everybody around you is cheering you on to that finish line.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, God's saying, that's not the finish line. It's not for a long time because it says we're supposed to race towards the finish line, never give up. Let's keep straining for that end, pressing on
toward the mark.
And yet that's not the mark. And yet we make that mark the be all and end all.
Have you ever seen some of these races where, especially car races is a good example, where they have to go around the track a few times? We're the ones that think, no, I only need to go once. There's the finish line right there. I saw the flags. It was the wrong flag. You're looking at the wrong flag. That's not the finish line. That's only telling you've only made the first lap.
Yeah. It's just crazy when you think about it because, and there's just people, if you don't run towards it, then there's something wrong with you. You can't continue on with life unless you gain that.
Yep.
It's just, I'm not blaming other people. So I don't want to think that I'm not blaming other people for my decisions. I know I made mistakes. I don't want to say but because that usually negates any thing before it. I don't mean it like that.
It takes away the responsibility that you have over
I'm going to take full responsibility. I just saying it makes it very difficult to see other options or to do anything else when you're in like a giant, like what they say, echo chamber.
Yeah.
Like you're just surrounded by people who agree with you.
You're in the stadium and they're all cheering you on. You've got the spotlight right on you.
Yeah. And what's funny when it comes to something like this, yeah, the world may not be like saying you need to get married, but they are saying you need to find a significant other romantic relationship in order to have fulfillment. So it's not just the church. It's like culture, it's movies and music and TV and anything that you get involved in. It's all saying the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. Yeah. This is where all your fulfillment, where your support when you're down, your sounding board when you're upset, your cheering crowd when there's a lot in there. And that's very appealing, even if it's the wrong person.
And I think what it does is it really dehumanizes the other person.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, you don't care almost anything about who it is that you're marrying.
Yeah.
Like you just start letting things go left and center because you're so focused and driven to get that.
Yeah. You will ignore warning signs and red flags that may be telling you that you're going into the briar patch rather than the trail that leads you to the higher ground, which is what can be really interesting analogy if you think about it. Because if anybody has ever been, and not to beat the dead horse of abuse, but anybody who's been in an abusive relationship can tell you that it feels like you're tangled in the briar patch and it's really hard to extract yourself from it. So
I think one of the podcasts I was listening to today, they basically said some people, like you actually go and you take the gift of marriage instead of receiving it. And that kind of really spoke to me in a sense of, like we go about it like we're supposed to go and get it.
Yeah.
But a gift is not like, you don't go and steal a gift. You don't take it from the person. You receive the gift that was freely given.
Yeah.
And if God freely gives you the gift of marriage, like you go and you receive that, you don't rip it out of his hands.
No.
Like you want it now, like you're a 5-year-old who's upset because his brother got a birthday present and he didn't.
Yeah. Oh, what does 1 John say? Little children, keep yourself from idol.
And like it's just, and like I said, it permeates the culture, it permeates the church culture, and it does it in a way of passively does it as well. Because I think I was listening to the podcast again today. I was listening to a bunch about this stuff, and it was like that churches around the family marriage, in a sense, that generally churches revolve around marriage.
Yeah.
They've got everything is geared towards couples and children and family units.
Oh, what wasn't there that on that one podcast that you sent us where that preacher where he talks about, or was it something else that I read? I can't remember, where they won't hire a single pastor because he's not married. So why is he single? There's got to be something wrong with him.
Or sometimes they'll even use the verse that it says that pastors can only be the husband of one wife. And they're like, they're not married, so they're not a husband of one wife. And you're like, it's probably more like more than one. They should not be married to more than one wife.
Right.
So 0 is less than 1. So we're not more.
Which is still a good thing. And you never know what, and it's sad that like even ourselves, like how many times did we have to reiterate, we are not a couple. We're not. And
we want to get t-shirts just to save time.
Yeah.
Does that come up a lot?
It has not. It's
not outrightly, but there's a lot of, some people do wonder.
Yep.
But I think some people, it's in this day and age, who knows anymore?
Right.
And it's just, but when we do things like we go to the restaurant, we have a joint account for the house. So we pay together. It's just, we're always going, we're just friends. We're just like, we want that t-shirts so that we're just friends. And then on the back says, no, really.
Yes. Right. Because people still, I know you say you're just friends, but are you really?
I know, right? We're sisters, like sisters, just
sisters. Yeah.
Like sisters.
We are like sisters. And then they come in going, oh, you really do have separate bedrooms. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we have separate bedrooms. I sleep with the cat.
But not with the cat.
Not with the cat. Because that's... Stop. Oh my gosh. Although he is a little cuddle bunny. He likes to snuggle up and put his arms around my neck. And then Dennis gets out, so he can go out. You're too hot.
Yes, so we have the pets in a perfectly normal
Sister
way.
house. This is
Yes, it's just
sisters.
we're all friends here.
We're all friends. Oh dear.
Oh my word. David's just saying, oh, I'm so glad there's no video on me.
I'll just hide under my desk until this is over.
So what's funny is that David, you can have a roommate that's a guy, and I am pretty sure that you're not
Yeah.
going to have the same thing as us. I don't know. Maybe people assume, I don't know. But I feel like you can be like, yeah, he's my roommate, he's my friend, and people will be like more accepting of it.
Yeah, I feel
Especially because
that
you're
way.
especially
Yeah.
as you're younger too. But if you I don't know, maybe it would change with I don't know. I just feel like that Monique and I are so young, like 20s, where that's where you have roommates, and as opposed to like when you get older and we're
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so weird.
Because we're at the age where we technically should be married, and well, myself, I should be a grandmother with
I
grandchildren,
should have kids like already in their teenagers.
right? But David
And
is still young enough where he's still in university, he's still going to school. Of course, he's got roommates, don't they all?
yeah.
Weird.
So we're in this like weird setup. Just so you know, this might come up for you eventually, David.
Yeah, if you're 40 and still living with your roommate, it may come up.
I
You
don't
may have
know.
to
With how
start
the
saying,
economy is going, I'm probably going to have a roommate for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and that's apparently a thing. There are so many people now that are going into the joint house buying,
Oh.
which comes with its own problems. If you're doing it with a stranger, don't do that. Be sure the person you want to buy a house with, because one person literally got screwed over, to put it lightly.
all the time.
Yeah.
That's like that we've talked about it before. The unequally yoked thing works in not just marriages.
Yeah.
Like
And we can
business
get into that.
partnerships.
We can get into that next.
I'm saying.
Right.
I know what business. I've seen my dad go through 2 or 3 businesses because of
Yeah. Yeah.
unsavory.
Yeah. My uncles have done the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen too. And that's why we are very blessed, Monique and I, that God brought us together as friends.
Yeah.
And sisters in Christ. But that we are two people that like I joke how we're both black belts and we haven't killed each other yet, so we must be okay.
She's a higher level. She can kill me faster.
Killing you slowly, is that not like a killing?
Isn't that a song? Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a love song, so let's not go there either, okay? Oh, dear. See, this is the kind of fun that we have, because we can joke about stupid things because literally they're stupid things, but we can laugh
Yeah.
about it. And we're going into our 5th year. So next year we will have to do the mortgage thing all
The
over
house,
again
yeah.
and stuff. We have never had an argument. We may have had I don't know if we've even had we may have been, having pissy moods,
But not at each other.
but not at each other. No.
We're like rent to each other if we're having a thing going on with our work or
Yeah.
life or whatever, but never at each other. And
No.
usually if there's something and we're like, if I'll be like, oh, what do you think? You're like, oh, I don't think so. And I'm like, okay. And same with the other way around.
Other
like,
way around. Yeah.
if we ever disagree in the sense of I was thinking this, or we're like, okay. And then we just fix something else. So it's not a
Yeah. I
Like-
thought we could use a trampoline. I'm like, oh, okay. Sure.
There's a higher level of indifference to spouse relationships than then roommates. That's what I see, at least.
What do you mean by that?
Natasha, I think, gave a good example of that, where if one of you is upset or frustrated with something in your life that's going on, that the other person asks, "What's going on?" And you're like, "I don't want to talk about it." And they're like, "Oh, okay." Or you just avoid the person for a while. You give the person space. I mean, you guys could probably answer this better than I can, but in marriages, and I at least from what I've seen in my parents, that clashes a lot more than it would with.
Because you're more emotionally involved with each other.
Yeah.
So you almost take it as a personal affront if they don't want to talk to you right away. Whereas I just need space by myself, and you're just like, all right.
because we're more autonomous. We understand that we're not. Yeah,
You
we're
can tell if someone's in
Yeah.
that kind of relationship, the level of difference. And maybe that's not the right word for it, but
Which makes sense. There are in some instances where, as housemates, where there could be conflict if one person is, say, OCD neat and the other person is not is a hoarder. That could cause a lot of problems. I could see that.
Monique and I just both hoard books, so I think we're good.
Yeah. 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 But we also know if something needs to be done, if one person is there and they do it, and the next day the other person does it or whatever, it's never anything that becomes an issue where in a relationship, like you had that with your husband, can you take out the garbage before you leave? So he says, yeah, no problem. And then he leaves and you go out going, you didn't take the garbage. Then it becomes this thing of,
Now I feel bad if I don't actually bring garbage out or bring it in. I'm like, oh no, I said that about him, and now I'm not doing it for Monique. I'm just making her do all the garbage forever.
forever today.
I'm usually rushing out or rushing away again, and I'm like, oh no, I didn't even bring the garbage away.
And sometimes what I'll do, because you're not home, you've got the truck. And I know how difficult it is to maneuver around this object that's sitting up at the top of the driveway. So I'll bring it closer so that it's beside your truck and then you can just move it the rest of the way up.
Then I remember it because it's there, and then I can push it up the rest of the way. It's more like I'm rushing out at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, I don't even think about it till I see other ones where I come back and I'm like, okay, I'll come back and I'll be like, oh, I should put that away. I'm so tired. I'll have to shower. I'll put it away before I leave for Taekwondo. But then I'm like, for Taekwondo,
Garbage away
again. I'm such a bad roommate.
We went from mornings to
because it's such a hardship to drive that empty container from the top of the driveway to its spot. It's
I know,
horrible.
right?
I don't know how I deal with it.
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how she puts up with me.
Yeah, I just make her clean out the dishwasher more often.
Oh yeah, I guess that's why. More. I need to get. Oh, I need to drink. Oh, I think I should clean. Oh, I should. And then it just happens. She knows it's a domino effect with me. I'll start with one thing, and all of a sudden the next thing, this entire area is cleaned up. But at the same time, I'm not like, oh, she lives here too. She should be putting it. That's not even a thought. It's just, oh, I have time and
I'm here, but I'll tell you, I am the one who cleans all of the boxes.
yes, she does, because I forget they exist. Because I always had the outdoor cats, indoor, outdoor, so they always pooped outside. I did not have a litter box to think about regularly. I just, until she's cleaned them out, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's litter boxes. It's just like literally doesn't even come into my brain.
And because I use the pellets, it's such an easy clean. I just dump it, throw it, fill it.
Yeah.
There's no scraping, no clumps, and it's not heavy. And I get my steps in because I have to go down the stairs and back upstairs.
Put it outside.
Figure it out.
stair
All
workout.
Yeah, there you go.
all these things. But these are just as roommates. These are things that you just do because they're not. But when you're married, these kind of tasks almost seem to think you're making me do everything and you're not doing anything. And you're supposed to be helping. We're supposed to be a partnership. And I think you mentioned that up here a bit too, about it being a partnership. So when you're not acting like partners in the relationship, then it becomes very one-sided. And in a marriage, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Isn't it also like more common for you to notice something that's wrong than something that isn't?
Mm-hmm.
You dwell on it, and you can sometimes make inferences like, oh, they must be doing this, even
you
though
subconsciously count.
Yes.
So you have to. I guess the idea is you need to be aware of like everything, what the other person is doing for you, what the person did for you compared to what he or she didn't do.
Yeah.
Because it's yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you talk about commitment and partnership in a marriage, it's this verse, and this is our tattoos that we have. It is commonly used a lot when they do, like when the pastor gives the message in a wedding ceremony. I know we talked to Pastor Adam, and he had said that this is one that he has used commonly, but it is not just about, because it talks about more than two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil, for if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. It talks about how even in friendship, this is a verse that does not just apply to marriage relationship, but can also apply to friends, to coworkers, to any kind of partnership where you are relying on each other. And I think this was something that they used like during wartime, because
probably, yeah.
Because where one person could sleep, the other person can keep watch. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I think we lose a lot when we're so focused on marriage, and it becomes such a big thing. Like we see it everywhere, like especially in society with relationships. everything is sexual relationship.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible for it to be as an equivalent meaningfulness if it's not sexual. You can't have as meaningful of a relationship as friends or as coworkers. And again, coworkers is going to have a different dynamic, but you could have a really good coworker dynamic
Mhm.
with someone, or a really good friendship, or a really good sibling, or there's so many types of relationships.
Yep.
And yet there's so much like focus that's on romantic. That's why we're always having people like assume things about us, because you can't possibly have that type of relationship and not be romantic.
Right.
Like and we forget that there are other relationships out there that can be significant and deep and meaningful.
Yeah. Like there are another two girls who are also housemates. They were best friends in high school. One moved away trying to see if she could find a husband. And when that didn't work, and then she realized that she missed her friend and she just wanted to be with her friend. So they decided that the marriage thing just wasn't for them. So they decided to go into same thing, like into the shared house, and same setup that we have. And they have been living together for a lot of years, and they make it work, and it works really well for them, and they're happy and content. And I remember when they first started living together in the house that I would hear these rumors about them, and I'm going, I don't think that's true, but I didn't know because I didn't know them well. So I was just like, is it true? Is it not true? And then I went to go visit them and I realized that it's not true at all. They are just friends. So it's that thing where you got to be careful how you look at people. Just because they're living together in a house doesn't mean that they're that way.
And I don't know if you've ever read or watched the Anna Green Gables, and how she always wanted a bosom friend. And that's what she found in Diana. Like, she just wanted that really good friend that she could share everything with. And it was like, and that's in a sense, like, was still a possibility that many years ago when she wrote that this was a normal thing, that you could have this really good friendship relationship that wasn't anything to do with sexuality whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And we see it so rarely now. I keep going back to that show Psych, which I love because it's just like these two guys that are just really good friends. And it makes it it's so enjoyable that there's not that
Right.
other dynamic.
Was it last week or the week before where Pastor Justin was talking about friendship? Because it happens quite frequently, even in marriage relationships, where you rely on each other so much that you only see each other's perspective and you don't have anybody else's input into situations that may require maybe like a third person understanding. For women, it's very easy to find friends, usually. But there does come a time, like, and it happened in my marriage too, where I was no, my husband is all I need. I don't need anybody else. And it led to a lot more destruction than it could have, than maybe could have been avoided.
My ex had that feeling about me, though. I didn't need any other friends too, but then I agreed with them too.
Oh, see, that's not good.
It's even more.
Yeah,
It doesn't help at all.
No, but they also say that men tend to not build friendships, because for two guys to say, I love you as a friend, you will never hear them.
They don't use those words.
They don't use those.
Yeah, it's based off actions.
Yeah, it's an awkwardness for them. Whereas, like, for girlfriends, we can say, I love you, you are my best friend, and you are my sister. We can get that.
But if I went up and just slugged you in the arm, you'd just be like, why did you hit me? I have a bruise now. And yet,
but that's how guys do, right? But sometimes when and a lot of times, especially for young marrieds, they say to get yourself an older married couple as a mentor for your relationship. Because especially in the first 3 years, the first 7 years, they can be the hardest. And that's statistically where most divorces happen, is within the first 7 years.
I think it's 1, 3, and 7, I think are the,
Yeah.
or 1, 5, and 7. There's like, there's certain years that are
harder than others.
Specifically hard.
Yeah. And then when children start becoming involved, or the lack of children start becoming involved, that can set a whole other dynamic that can,
Wait, what? Did you just the lack of children or of children? So you lose both ways.
yes. Because
It's more like you assume that, so you think that everything's going to be fixed by children and it happens and it doesn't get fixed by children, or you think everybody's going to be fixed by children and you can't have children. And so nothing's fixed.
Yeah.
Because you put the focus now on children as being the marriage didn't fix everything, but
Okay,
now
so
the
it's
children will fix everything.
it can't be fixed with children, and it can't be fixed without children. Is
it,
that
it-
what you?
no, what I mean is,
Or even if you assume that you don't want children and you think that's going to be the answer to everything,
Yeah.
because you're putting the emphasis on something that's not God.
I am so confused
What-
right now.
what happens is that when a couple gets married, one of the first things that starts happening is people start asking you when you're going to have children. And a lot of times, if there's trouble in the relationship or you're dissatisfied, the first thing you start wanting to do is start adding children. So you may find yourself fortunate enough to get pregnant and having those said children, hoping that these children will help fix your relationship. Children don't fix a
Okay.
relationship. They can cause more stress to a relationship. But say you're also in that same situation, you're trying to have children and it's not happening. So then you're ending up with the disappointment and the depression and the doctors and the fertility
stress
tests
of
and the
everything.
stress of all of that, trying desperately to have a child, to try desperately to fix your relationship. And it just causes more stress and more fracturing. So to think that,
Because you're expecting something that's not God to fix something.
Yeah.
That is something that only God can fix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a lot of people think marriage is going to fix everything, or it's going to be the be all and end all.
Yeah.
And then they get married. And like Monique said, people are like, when are you having kids? And they're like, I guess I need to have kids now. And then it does or doesn't happen, but still life is life and people are sinful and there's ups and downs and happy and sad. And there's no fix that we have this idea that it will be better. Even if we say, I know it's just not going to be better, it's just going to be different. But we think it's going to make it better.
Yeah, we still think it's going to make it better, even if we say, I
Actually-
know it's not. But yes, that's really
Like
not
in
what he's
theory
saying.
in my head, but really, I'm like a kid.
Mm.
If I eat all this candy, of course I'm not going to feel sick. I'm going to feel awesome because I want to eat all this candy. And then
And then you get
you're
a
throwing up
stomach
all
ache.
night.
Yep, yeah. So it's that balancing, and balance is really difficult when your focus is too strong in one direction.
So
Yeah.
if we are looking for anything besides God to fix something or to make life better or to do anything the positive in your life in a sense, then that is now becoming an idol if you're
Mhm.
expecting that to be
Yeah,
the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
So that's just, yeah. And it's just that we expect,
We
I don't know, we
expect
expect way
fairy
too
tale.
much.
We expect the
It's
fairy
a-
tale.
I don't even know the word for it, but that's a very sad way to look at it.
More realistic.
More
'Cause
realistic.
it's more. There's two kind of people: the people who have to go through that alone without hope, and then those who are married who now have to go through that together. So now they actually have someone there to punch them in
But-
the right direction, or
But I think if you go in actually with a better perspective of what marriage is and that it's not the fix for anything, but it's a thing that's good that you can be a part of in your life, but you also understand that you're two people that are trying to follow God's will together, but it's people are people.
Yeah.
And even the people that love each other the most will still have times of ups and downs. And that's okay if you understand that this is part of it. You're not going in thinking that this is going to fix my life or my life's going to be better and rainbows and unicorns are flying everywhere.
Sunshine
It's
and
just-
roses and
Yeah. But I think it's just more perspective. You can enjoy the fact that you find somebody. You can love them. You can join together in marriage. You can have children together. And you can do it well
and grow
and in a
old
godly
together
way
and be
and do it and there are these people that we've seen in our lives that had these marriages.
Yeah.
But I think it has to do with whether or not you're putting this marriage on the pedestal of the be all and end all, the goal of life, and you strive towards it, and all of a sudden it's not what you thought it would be. But if you go into it with with a more biblical, more realistic view, And not, it's all bad. It's just, we're going to be yelling at each other and there's morning breath and that's all it's less about, it's more about just understanding that it's a good thing. God's not going to say this is a good thing if it's just all bad.
Right.
And it's not going to say it's a blessing and be like, oh, you thought it was a blessing, but it really, but it's like, but understanding the perspective of when we go towards it and when we're looking for this good thing, it's not the best thing.
No.
Christ is the best thing. And if you're thinking that it's going to fulfill you or fix you or
Cure your loneliness.
like all these things that you think it's going to do, then you're setting yourself up for a failure or for disappointment, dissatisfaction, and then that can lead to a deterioration of the marriage.
Yeah.
So as I think we should bring this to a close as we're getting the time up there. But I think as we look at marriage, again, what we said at the beginning, it's a good thing. It's a blessing. Children are a blessing. Wife is a blessing. Husband is a blessing. This is a symbol of what Christ is to the church. These are all good things. But it's not a replacement for Christ.
No.
It's not a replacement for God in our lives. And if we understand that with going into marriage or going to look for marriage, while it's a good thing, we are in a sinful world and it's not meant to complete us. It's not meant to take the place of God. Then we can actually go into it with a healthier mindset and actually appreciate what it means to be married, what it means to look at these things, and actually perhaps make wiser choices along the way.
Yeah.
Either with your singleness or with who you marry.
Yeah. One of the verses that I should have paid better attention to and asked questions about why, where they gave this verse, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. When you're a single person desperate for marriage, you don't understand what this verse means. But I would actually investigate what this verse really means. Seeking God and his righteousness. It's learning how to trust God for your future, understanding that he knows you better than you know yourself and wants the best for you. And he's not going to disappoint you. He's not going to let you down. He's not going to destroy your life, but he will give you the best life you can possibly have if you trust him and let him direct your path and seek after him, find him, get to know him, understand who he is and what he is all about. And you'll never know where that will take you. And it may take you to a married life, and it may take you to a wonderful married life where you are together, for until death do you part kind of thing. So it's not a bad thing. And time is not good. Yes, time goes by fast. Today it's not. Today is still today. Tomorrow has enough of its own troubles.
And I'll just give you like one parting question.
No,
maybe. If you're wondering how you're feeling, how you're viewing marriage, if you're viewing it correctly or not, ask yourself this: what if I never get married? And just see in your heart. You have to answer me. See in your heart what your response to that is. What if you knew today that you were never going to get married? And what is your heart reaction to that? And that will just help you to gauge where your heart is in regards to marriage and whether or not it's becoming an idol or become an idol, or if you have a healthy view of it.
Yeah. Or if it's even something like, you see, everybody around me is married. So why are they married and I'm not? Don't play the comparison. It has something to do with how you're feeling about yourself. And I think mine had something to do with that.
Yeah, there's lots of reasons.
Here's a hint for that question. First, seek the kingdom of God.
Yeah, exactly. Seek ye first the kingdom.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Don't over-glorify marriage.
Or, as we'll find out next week, singleness.
Or singleness. Yeah, because we do have that too. Oh, no, it's a great fun. We had one of those TikTokers, didn't we?
Yeah.
Roller coasters.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed our episode, please tell us, comment, subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And we thank you for listening. Hope to see you all here next time.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this thoughtful journey. Marriage is indeed a gift, but when we elevate it above our relationship with God, or see it as the sole measure of a fulfilled life, we risk missing out on true contentment and spiritual growth. Remember, our ultimate fulfillment comes from our walk with God and understanding His purpose for us, married or single. We hope this episode encourages you to reflect on your own priorities and what they mean in the light of faith. Be sure to tune in next week for more conversations that inspire and uplift. Until then, remember to live your single life to its fullest.